Dylan, you mentioned 8 completed passes. I would be willing to bet that 6 of those are those little 3-yard screens that we were seeing, and that's why we're seeing such low numbers on average for yards per play. Because, like I said, small ball. They're throwing these little 3-yard screens, and a big thing that I started to notice, especially more prominent going into the second half, is that the receivers, upon making the catch, they're trying to do too much with the ball. They're trying to go laterally. They need to just put their head down and get 2 extra yards and hit the guy. But instead, they're trying to dance around and juke and do moves, and they end up going backwards 2 or 3 yards after making a 2-yard catch.
You know what, Mason? We can run off any numbers. We can give any analytics you could possibly think of. Tonight is something, you have to live with as a player and as a coach. Tonight, the William Paterson Pioneers got flat out beat. There's no other way to say it. Rowan imposed their will on defense, and they made plays when they needed to on offense. And again, as I mentioned at halftime and in pregame, it's the one breakout long play the Pioneers defense always gives up, and tonight that happened twice. So there's a 60-yard bomb from Pickney to France that put up the Profs 14-0, and then a Bragg's touchdown, and then a screen pass for 45 yards put 7 more points on the board. So again, it's a slip in the coverage every once in a while that ultimately, the Pioneers defense bending, not breaking, those long plays kill the Pioneers defense.
Absolutely. And you look at these numbers, when the other team has more than 5 times total yardage on offense, you just can't expect to stay in the game. I mean, we saw similar stats with a similar reflection and only a 7-0 lead from Rowan going into the second half. However, right now, ending the game, the Profs had more than 5 times yardage on offense. Something I want to bring up here that I found that I was actually happy with the Pioneers is that I said they really need to come in and bring it out of the second half and bring the energy, start getting the momentum on their side. And we saw them bring the blitz early.
Right.
They went 3 blitzes in a row on defense, was able to make Rowan go 3 and out.
Right.
I said, all right, here we go. Here's our time. Out of that, we ended up going back and forth 4 straight 3 and outs, 2 for each team.
Yeah, no offense coming out. Yeah, no offense coming out of the gate for either team. And then again, it was just a matter of who's going to strike first, and it just so happens it was Rowan with the bomb to Nick France. I believe it was a 60-yard touchdown. And again, I mean, when you're letting up 60-yarders in a tight ball game, it extends the lead to 2 touchdowns, and then another rushing touchdown, and then another passing touchdown, and before you know it, you're down 31-0. It really, truthfully, never even felt like the game was extremely out of hand. The scoreboard shows a rout, and ultimately it was definitely a rout when you go look at the scoreboard and look at the stats to show it. But the Pioneers defense did a great job. Aside from 3 plays, they were lights out all night. And again, I mean, it was the same story for 10 games last year. Limit the big plays. You give yourself a chance to stay in the ballgame. And tonight, 3 big plays were the difference between potentially staying in the ballgame. It's not going to help if your offense doesn't, you're not going to win ball games if you don't move the ball, obviously. But, you limit the big plays. You give yourself a chance. You hang around in the ball game. Your confidence grows the longer you stick around in the ball game. But when you don't move the ball on offense, there's really no one play to harp on to get things started.
I got to agree here. And Rowan, we saw definitely not so much taking risks, but like I said, going into the second half, they need to start hitting these receivers on routes 10, 15 yards, and that's what Rowan was doing. So, yes, we saw them go downfield, that huge 60-yard pass from Pickney to France in the middle of the third quarter. But then we see things, again, we covered this in the halftime show. Both teams favoring that short screen pass. However, Rowan was much more successful and was able to do something with it. We saw Rowan turn that short screen pass into a 45-yard score. Why? Because as soon as the receiver made the catch, he didn't try to do too much with it. He put his head down, he knocked somebody over, and he ran downfield. He was able to break 7 tackles on that drive.
Right. No, absolutely. You're not even breaking tackles. The fact he's not running out of bounds. Okay, I'm going to pick up 3 yards and get out of bounds.
It's that, and he's dancing too much. It's not. I mean, yeah, we saw a couple William Paterson moves where they had just aborted the play and just had to run out of bounds.
Right.
But we saw him. They try and make a move. No, put your head down, hit the guy, and then take a 2-yard gain after the hit.
Right. And again, some days you're the pigeon, some days you're the statue. No other way to put it. William Paterson got flat out beat tonight. And it happens, especially against a tough opponent like Rowan. Now, the only downfall here for the Pioneers, Mason, is the schedule does not let up. These next 4 games are in division tough football teams. Next Saturday, we're hosting against Kane University, and then we've got our Route 46 rival, Montclair State University, taking a trip to Wayne, New Jersey, for our homecoming game. And then we go to Frostburg, then to Salisbury, and then finally the schedule leads up with a game versus Southern Virginia.
You know, if my memory serves me correctly, I believe that Alfred State and Southern Virginia University were our 2 wins on the season. And unfortunately, it's looking like we're going to see a repeat of last season with just poor production in the middle. When the schedule lets up, I wouldn't say even capitalize on it, but just hold our own and able to come out with the wins. And I recall them not being big wins last year.
No,
if my memory serves me correctly.
They were fairly close, and we lost a tight one versus TC&J as well. But again, I mean, Kane, we even hung tight with. I'm pretty sure it was a little bit of clock mismanagement towards the end of the ball game last year at Kane, which eventually did the Pioneers in. But again, Montclair ran for Mason, and listeners, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I was at that Montclair game last year, and if I'm not mistaken, they rushed for 8 touchdowns against us.
Yes. I was standing next to you with stats on the call there, and I believe that it was all on the ground. It was all on the ground because you know what? If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Right.
And they kept running it up the field, and they kept finding the holes. We couldn't seal the gaps. They were getting into the secondary. Secondary couldn't wrap up, and it was just bad. You know, we were talking about in the halftime show and the halftime and the pregame show. One of the key elements here needs to be take care of the ball. Going back to my football days, one of the best ways to describe it is my coach said, you got to pretend that ball is worth $1 million. So every handoff, every pass, every possession, every play, that football is worth $1 million. And every time you throw that ball into dangerous territory, you are potentially giving up $1 million. And we saw Rowan, I wouldn't say take risks with it because they still took care of the football, but William Paterson was just way too willing to just settle for, 2 plays, maybe a first down, and then go 3 and out.
Right.
And they were just settling for that, not treating that football like $1 million. And if William Paterson wants to get the momentum later in the week, like you said, with this very dangerous looming schedule ahead of them, at least with the next 4 games, they really got to start taking care of the football and not settling for these short screenplays and trying to dance around with it. Put your head down and hit somebody. This is football. Right. This is big boy football. We know what we're doing here, and we have the potential. We've seen them do it. They were just very timid out there, settling for things, not throwing the football well, not utilizing receivers on proper routes. It was just not proper football, and the fundamentals were lacking.
And for the record, it was Montclair who scored 5 rushing touchdowns on us, and it was Salisbury who scored 8 rushing touchdowns last game. So again, those are our next 2 opponents. 2 of the next 4 opponents. So like I said, the schedule does not lighten up. But Mason, it's not even like the play calling is an issue, because these plays are designed to give our receivers the advantage. The way Rowan was throwing the screens, and they had receivers blocking for their receivers and creating isolation opportunities where they really just ISO the athlete with the ball and give him a chance to make a play. It seems like William Paterson wasn't getting the open space or the separations or the blocks. It wasn't really a matter of it wasn't poor play calling at all, because when you think about it, you're giving the ball to a Malcolm Robinson or an Anthony DeMarsico and saying make a play. It's up to the player to make a play. It's a lack of execution, really.
I agree with you to a point there. I do think that they were giving them the opportunity to succeed, and they weren't capitalizing on it. However, as if I were in Jerry Floor or James Hickey's shoes, I got to identify that it's not working.
Right.
After you throw 5 screenplays and you're averaging 10, 11 yards per receiver, total for the game, and you're averaging, 2-3 yards after these plays, you have to identify that this isn't working. We need to start changing it up.